Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, where we talk about all things self-care for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. It's time to bring that same compassion that you offer to everyone else in your life to yourself as well. In this podcast, you'll hear real-life stories of how self-care transformed people's lives as they were going through life's storms. You'll learn practical, actionable tools to begin the self-care journey yourself as well. Because like I always say, small changes make a large impact. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani. I'm a physician, best-selling author, and the founder of Radiant Living Institute, where I guide people to get unstuck and learn to live radiantly again. Through my signature program, Reclaim Your Radiance, you'll reclaim your worth, renew your energy, and restore your happiness in your life, career, and relationships. To get started, download your free guidebook, 6 simple yet powerful steps to create your radiant life at radiantlivinginstitute.com. Quick disclaimer before we get started, the information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always seek the advice of your own medical practitioner and or mental health provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. I'm so excited to bring you another solo cast episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast today. So this episode is by request from an avid listener and client of mine. So thank you so much for the request. I always love hearing what you want to hear more of on this show. So if you're listening right now and you have a specific request of a topic that you want to hear on this show, please let me know. Send me a message because I want to make sure that we're talking about the things that are top of your mind. And so today's topic is an interesting one. It's about vulnerability hangover. So it's interesting because I'll be completely honest with you. I have a lot of things coming up within myself when I think about this topic. And I think it's because of the journey that I myself have been on with this as well, right? So what is vulnerability hangover? It's that feeling that you get after you have just made yourself vulnerable. And this could be in so many different situations. I mean, it could be in you posting something on social media or being a guest on a podcast or a show or being a guest on an interview, or it could be being vulnerable and opening up about something that's really important to you. And it's the first time you're sharing it with someone who you love and care about deeply, right? There are so many different ways and places that this can show up. And so what does that mean, this idea of vulnerability hangover anyways? It's those feelings that can come up after you've just been really vulnerable with someone and you're kind of thinking about it afterwards. And it's like, should I have said that? Should I not have said that? And maybe a lot of self-doubt coming up, maybe a lot of feelings of shame coming up, right? So first, I want to know, have you ever experienced that? Like, has that ever happened to you in any situation? Like I said, it may be sort of quote unquote public, like on social media or a podcast, but it could also be within the context of even your most intimate relationships that, you know, it's the first time that you ever expressed something or shared something that you were feeling and it felt really hard. And, you know, you weren't sure what the reaction was going to be like and all of those things, right? And it's such a big part of the human experience. And that's why I think it's just such an interesting topic. And even though a lot of things were coming up even within myself when I was thinking about this topic and what I was going to share here with you today, I still hit the record button because I thought it was just a really important topic and discussion to be had. So I think first of all, when you're experiencing it and feeling this, is to remind yourself to practice self-compassion. Remind yourself that it takes a lot of courage and strength to open yourself up and to be vulnerable in the first place. It's hard. It's not easy. And I think give yourself credit for that and just acknowledge it. I think also letting go of the outcome, right? So I think a lot of that can come from like, well, what's the reaction going to be, right? From whoever it is, right? Again, if it's in a public situation, what's kind of a, what are your followers going to say, or podcast listeners going to say, or clients, or whatever the case may be. And if it's in a more intimate, personal setting, it could be, well, gosh, what are they going to say, right? And I think that goes down to that core human fear of, are they still going to love me, right? No matter what it is, no matter what relationship it is, right? And I'm not talking specifically or solely to an intimate partner sort of relationship, like whatever relationship it is. I mean, that's just a core human fear and need and desire to be loved, right? And so I think it just kind of cuts at that, right? It cuts it into that fear and that wound that maybe many of us have in some way, shape, or form. And so knowing that you need to also let go of the outcome, because you can't control what anyone else thinks or says or does, right? So whatever their reaction is to whatever you shared, that's their reaction. And you don't have control over that. But what you can do is tap into your self-compassion once again. Honor, acknowledge yourself for being true to yourself, for speaking your truth, no matter how vulnerable it felt, right? I think another thing is also kind of connecting to your why for sharing whatever it is, right? Are you sharing this piece of information to heal yourself, to heal a relationship, or to help others in some way, to inspire or to encourage, right? So I think that can also be helpful, is just to connect with that sort of deeper why of why you're sharing this particular information to this particular person or on this particular platform, is just to kind of find some of that clarity within yourself as well. And then there was another thing I wanted to bring up about this, and this point that I'm about to make actually goes back to kind of before you share the information, when you're kind of deciding if you're going to or not. And that is this idea that maybe you don't need to share everything, actually. And what I mean by that is that we live in a very digital world with social media, right? And it's very common to see so much being shared, right? Of people sharing so much of their personal lives on these various platforms. And I think there's pluses and minuses to all of that. I think some pros of that is that we can feel less alone when we know that others are going on a similar journey, right? We can offer and seek support in those ways as well. So there's pluses and minuses to all of that. And I think just getting clear for yourself, again, kind of going back to that point about like, what's your why? Like get clear on that. Like, what's your why for sharing whatever piece of information it is? And I go back to also this idea that I heard from Brene Brown, actually, which was just that like, there's certain things in your life that maybe are best to turn towards your inner circle for, right? And the way Brene Brown describes it is like, the people in your inner circle are like just about the number of people that you can fit their names down on a Post-it note. Like, it's not a huge list. It's not all of your Instagram followers. It's like maybe like the 3 to 5 people in your life who you trust the most and who will tell you the truth about what you're going through. And also maybe whatever it is also something that still needs to be healed before it's shared in a meaningful way. So it's a rather big topic. And these were just some of the initial thoughts that came to me when this topic was requested. And so I'm sure I'll have more episodes about this because this is such a big topic. And there's different, again, angles and places to look at this, right? And contexts, really different contexts to look at this as well. Another thing I'll share kind of along that same sort of last idea that I was talking about was this quote also, and I believe it was Glennon Doyle who I heard say this quote, which is to like and I believe it had to do with in response to one of her books that she had written. And she said, write from your scars, not from your wounds, right? So like teach, share, whatever it is from your scars, not your wounds, right? So like what that means is if you still have an open wound that you're healing from, like allow yourself to heal, like that's okay. Like, yes, of course, we connect to one another through our vulnerability. And you also get to choose who you're going to open up and be vulnerable with and when, right? So for whatever situation it is this like an inner circle sort of situation, or is this like an Instagram sort of situation? Like, and the thing is, no one can make that decision for you. It's completely different for everyone, and it's completely unique for everyone, right? So it's something that does require just kind of getting still with yourself and looking within and really seeing kind of what you need, what your why is, and the context, and really looking at the context too. So I hope you found this a little bit helpful. Like I said, this was kind of a hard one for me, I'll admit. And I think because it is so multi-layered, multifaceted, it certainly depends on the context of things as well. I will say, though, that this is a rather universal experience, right? No matter what context it is. Like we may all just have some different context that it is in, but in some way, shape, or form, it exists. And so, like I said, this may not be the only episode I do about this topic. And if you have any follow-up questions about it, certainly I welcome it. And if you have a personal story that you would like to share about this topic, I would love to feature you as well. And we can just continue the discussion that way as well. So, as I mentioned earlier, this episode was by request from an avid listener and client. And so, if there is a specific topic you want to hear more about on the Essential Self-Care podcast, I welcome your requests. So just head over to radiantlivinginstitute.com, use the contact page, let me know what you want to hear more about, or find me on social media at SheethalJamaniMD, and just send me a DM. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a positive review, and share this episode with someone you know. And remember, your free guide, 6 simple yet powerful steps to create your radiant life, is waiting for you at radiantlivinginstitute.com. Download it today.